Long way to go. Well, that's a good point. Where does OzFish get to? What's the goal? Did you ever set yourself out with a goal, or did it happen so quickly that you thought, let's see what happens?
Well, we had a strategic plan that we wrote back in the
Everyone's got a strategic.
Well, no, but the same lady that worked with me on our Fishes for Fish habitat, she left the department as well, Liz Baker, and she helped us write a strategic plan. And our first strategic plan, and I'm a very conservative person, and we wrote the first one. We thought, right, if we can just do this, then that'll be okay. And then we had to rewrite it after 2 years because we'd already achieved
Surpassed it, right?
So I guess everything is going faster than I thought it would. But I think the overarching goal that we want at some point is that every waterway in the country has an OzFish group, somehow looking after it.
So when we say an OzFish group, for someone who hasn't, they might have seen us in BCF. They may have seen the logo. It's quite a distinct logo. They might have seen Craig's number plate that's got OzFish written on it. They might have seen or heard the word, but they might not actually understand, Craig, how we operate or what we do. So I want to break it down for a little bit here. So when we say an OzFish chapter, you just said the word OzFish group, OzFish chapter. What we mean by that is a group of rec fishers or community members alike who just care for their environment in a local waterway. Let's use the Richmond River, like John and the team. They come together and they agree that something needs to be done. And they go, right, let's form a chapter.
Yep.
So the interest is established within those people. Then you might go, right, that's great. Well, what's OzFish do? OzFish provides that group of people with resources, information, funding, support networks,
insurance,
comms and engagement, marketing. So we basically we leverage off your interest and your passion, and we leverage off your understanding of the local waterway, and then we help you put that in place.
Yes. And so what part of it is, we don't want the local chapters to be going, hell for leather. We want them to go fishing and just enjoy their fishing. But we want them to have the opportunity to put something back, feel good about it, and celebrate that. And so we don't want them to fix every problem. But if we do one action a year and do a little bit of fundraising, a little bit of community engagement,
yep,
and then go and do another one, what we'll do is we'll change the community's mind, both about rec fishers generally, but also about the issue. And so we just keep that going. And so we're not going to...
like the conversations that you were talking about with the forum and the fisheries, just ticking it over, getting people understanding it.
Yes.
Right. And then I guess, look, that's a very micro way of looking at it, just spreading the conversation. And then if we go to the other end of the spectrum and some of the really big impact that we can have, let's just talk about Moreton Bay, for example, at the moment. I mean, that still is arguably one of the big successes in terms of the Australian story of restoration, because I'm not going to go through the whole project, but basically OzFish, with the help of many organisations and partners, is helping establish shellfish reefs in Moreton Bay. And they've done that off the back of a group of people who thought that collecting oysters from local restaurants and businesses, has a spot in this idea, in this project, to the point where now tons and mountains of oysters are sitting at a facility in Moreton Bay there.
Drying out, being
biosecure, getting
yes.
washed out, getting sanitised, sanitised in inverted commas, and now they're getting put in cages and drops back into Moreton Bay.
Yes, and creating reefs.
But that took 4 years.
And a lot of heartache.
So what was the biggest challenge, or what is the biggest challenge to get some of these?
I think the biggest challenge was finding Robbie Porter. So firstly it was finding a person like Robbie, and that's the same all around the country in all the chapters, finding a person that's got a bit of a passion to try and do this, and then coming in behind him and supporting him, and making it easy for him to release his passion and put things back. That's our challenge as an organisation.
So it's like you needed that one person to take it, to grab it by the horns and run with it.
Just need one person who wants to make a difference.
Yeah, right. Well, it's cool to think that, one chapter maybe in mid-north coast of New South Wales, their goal is just to start the conversation. And then another chapter in Queensland, their goal is to establish 19 hectares of oyster reef. Like there's no standard, is there? It's just you do it's your waterway. Yep. You're the lead runner in this race. We're just here to support you. So if all you want to get out of OzFish is plant a couple of trees every now and then and have a community engagement event, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
But
Fantastic.
if you want to establish over 6 years, 19 hectares and 50,701 robust oyster baskets in Moreton Bay, thumbs up.
Yes.
There's no comparison. There's no this chapter's better than that chapter.
Although, like any wreck fisher, it's a little bit competitive.
Yeah. Which is good.
Yes.
Which is good.
Well, no, you look around and you see, if you can see Robbie doing something like that, you say, oh, can we do something like that? Have we got a... And then part of it is actually understanding the problem in your river, have I got a problem in my river? It feels pretty good. Half the time, I don't think people realise what happened to their fishery. Like, they mightn't go back far enough. Most of the changes might have occurred back in the 1800s.
And they've never known any different.
And they haven't known any different, so they don't know that they've lost stuff.
Well, what's the issue in Tuckian? Because I know that's one of your locals, waterways. And I know it's a bit of a problem child in this area.
Well, I started trying to fix it in 1991, so yes, it's
91?
91.
Who won the grand final in 91?
Oh.
Do you reckon you've got it?
Yeah, that'll probably be Brisbane.
It's got to be Brisbane.
Yeah, that's right.
Brisbane or Canberra, one of the two.
Bugger them. No, so the problem was they built a floodgate in 1971, and so they blocked off all these creeks. So there's all the creeks that come down through this swamp, and come out into what's called the Broadwater, the Tuckian Broadwater, and out into the Richmond River. It got blocked off with floodgates, and the whole idea of putting those floodgates in was to make it better for farming. And as it turned out, all of this landscape was acid sulphate soil. So as soon as it started to dry out, it acidified.
Yeah.
And it's really is low quality grazing land. And so they're still grazing. So it's still landowners out there. So we've got to work with the landowners. Half the landscape is actually nature reserve, but it's actually in really poor condition because it's full of acid. There's hardly any bird life in there. There's no fish life in there. It's not much of a nature reserve. So we're working together with government agencies and the local community to try and say, let's just work through this. So we're getting close. So
I've seen a drone shot where it's like black water meets brown.
Yeah.
It's like a discoloured line.
Yeah.
It's very distinctive. What was that?
That's just that black water
coming
which
out.
is no oxygen.
Yeah, right. So that's an example of identifying a problem in your local waterway, and you might have several, which is great, and then going, right, what is that problem, and then how can we help?
And the best thing about that was John, and from the chapter, and his mates used to fish in the creeks upstream of Tuckian, which used to be where they used to go for bass fishing, but they can't anymore because the bass can't get through.
That's not because of fish passageways and barriers.
Well, it's because of the floodgate.
Floodgate, which is an example of what we were talking about
not just a floodgate, but poor water quality. Any self-respecting fish would feel and sense this really, highly acid, low oxygen environment.
They're going the other way. So, would you say that a lot of these habitat issues accumulate on top of each other? So, a fish barrier leads to poor water quality, which leads to potential, and then lack of snag. So, it's not one issue. At times, one waterway can be facing multiple issues, which all kind of connect to each other.
I think most waterways have multiple issues, and so the idea is then just to pick on the one that you think is you can fix.
Yeah, right. One of the other questions we often get, it's a fair question to ask, and it might not be asked very often, but it's like, sure, OzFish gets funding, but how? And where does that come from? And I know BCF was a major part of that, and that was was BCF coming on board the thing that really...
Well, yes, because the issue wasn't about BCF as an organisation. It was about the fact that they were going to ask their customers to make a contribution. And it wasn't, $10, $20, $30, $100 contributions. Yeah. It was 20 cents, 50 cents. Round up. And, or gold coin or whatever the staff ask for when you come through. And that's the thing that makes a difference, because I think it's now got the message out to all of those customers who have made the contribution, and then they start paying attention to the posts that are going out. So, I made a contribution to that. I think that's where the difference is, because it's actually saying to people, hundreds of thousands of people who've made that contribution, that this is what we're doing with it. We're leading seagrass restoration in the country.
We support this.
We're doing stuff on re-snagging rivers. We're redoing shellfish reefs. This is and then feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, and then the other way is through, of course, government grants.
Yeah, so we actually take that money from BCF, and then we put it into a competitive mix, and so on, try and get more money with it. And of course, they're not
a tender process.
Well, every grant is a process where you've got to compete with other people trying to do other things that all have to be fixed.
I guess that's a bit of it's a bit of a juxtaposition in itself that you've got multiple organisations looking to do something, and someone's got to win.
Yes. Well, multiple organisations trying to do